Hello friends and welcome. I'm Sarah Liz from Sassy's LLC and I'm super excited to be joining Trinity Stamps for their 6th birthday release and YouTube hop. So here's the card we're going to be making today. It is a circle pop-up cake card. It squishes flat and fits in an envelope, and I had a ton of fun making this. So we are using the Cake Top stamp set, and I have already used the coordinating die set to cut out the larger piece that's a little scalloped, but there isn't a die for the smaller piece. And so I just used a 3-inch circle, and I'm going around the edges with a light blue ink. I have 2 shades of teal here. The top is a little lighter, the bottom is sort of a medium teal, and then for our card base, I will use an even darker teal. Since this is a celebration, we are going to heat emboss our stamped images. And I found it easiest to stamp them on some scratch paper. That's just printer paper in there. And I'm going to use Versamark ink here. I can see it, but you can't really on camera. So I added some teal ink just to make it easier for you to see. And then I lined up my circle around it. That 3-inch circle is just barely big enough. You could go a little bigger if you wanted. Then I'm using removable adhesive, and I'll just lay my 3-inch circle inside of there. And I'm going to forget to use an anti-static powder tool here. And I had to go in with a paintbrush after adding all of this embossing powder and clean it up a little bit. So use your anti-static powder tool. I'll remember on the second one. But in the meantime, I'm just using a fine detail gold embossing powder, and then I'll heat that up with my heat tool until it's all melted and really glossy. For the second one, I've taped the negative from the scallop die onto my mat already to make sure that when I lay down that scallop circle stamp that it's not getting warped or distorted, right? There isn't a center in there. And so this worked a little better to make sure that everything fit. I'm stamping it in teal ink so I can see it. And then I adjusted that cutout just a little bit so that when I laid my die cut back down in there, it would fit perfectly and I would be stamping right perfectly around the edges. I'll use my removable adhesive again, and then we're going to run through kind of the same steps. While I'm doing that, I want to tell you about the hop and the giveaway. You can win a $25 gift card to the Trinity Stamps store, and there are so many amazing new goodies there for you to check out. So I will leave instructions for entering that giveaway in the description box below the video. I have also linked to the next step on the hop and all of the supplies I've used. Be sure to hop along so you can see all of the inspiration. There are such great projects in this hop today. So I'm heating up the larger circle, the scallop circle here, and it's a cake, but you could use that for so many different things. So definitely I see lots of possibilities with this one. I am splattering on some gold metallic watercolor. And then once I get that on there, I'm going to set that aside to dry and we'll start working on our pop-up elements. For our pop-up, I'm using acetate. Okay, so this strip is 2 inches and ultimately the other strip is going to be 2.5. I'm going to cut it down in a minute. I am going to score this using a metal pokey tool that's kind of sharpish. You could also use a pen. So I'm scoring at 1 inch and then I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to score at 1 1/4. And then I will flip it over again and score at 1 1/2. When I do this, it's sort of denting it and creating a direction. So the flipping is really helpful. Okay. Then I'm going to skip over 2 inches. So I'm going to score at 3 1/2. And then I will flip and do my 1/4 inch score lines. Flip again. Okay. So 3 1/2, 3 3/4, and 4 inches. Then I'm making a mark at 5 3/4 inches, and that's just to let me know where I want to cut this. When I go to fold this, right, you can kind of see the direction forcing itself on the acetate. I'm having to fold pretty hard, but that's because this is heavyweight acetate. Honestly, my regular acetate works a little better for this, but I couldn't find it. So we're going to use the heavy stuff. It's going to work just fine. And what we're doing is creating an accordion on either side. In the end, it's going to look like an hourglass. You can do this out of cardstock. Absolutely. If you don't have acetate or you don't want to use your acetate for this, go for it. But I think you get better pop this way and it hides a little better. For the bigger one, this is now 2.5 inches and I'm starting once again at 1 inch, then flip at 1 1/4 and flip at 1.5. So the first part of this is exactly the same. Then I'm going out to 4 inches. I will score, flip at 4, 4.25, and 4.5. And then I'm going to cut that at, I don't know, about 6.5, 6.75. And I'm going to fold this the same way. I'm going to bring my black scoreboard back in so you can maybe see this better, okay? So I'm scoring one way and then back again and back the other direction. It's a little accordion. Do the same thing on the other side. Because we were flipping that acetate all along, it knows where it wants to go. And there's a little flap, a short flap on one side and a long flap on the other. They need to overlap. I added 2 pieces of rip and stick tape, 1/4 inch tape, to the short flap. And then I tried to squish it flat as I was attaching this. I didn't do a great job squishing it. So this piece actually doesn't squish quite flat. So I learned my lesson. I'm going to do it differently this time. I'm overlapping, I'm squishing everything flat, and I'm using some mint tape, like Post-it tape, just to mark where I want that long flap to be when I attach the two. And so instead of trying to hold everything flat at the same time, I will just line up the edge of the long flap with that tape, and it's perfect. For our sentiment, I'm bringing in the Simply Sentimental Celebrate. We have a new one. There are stamps and coordinating dies. We're actually just going to use the dies this time, but you could use either one. I cut my Celebrate out of some gold foil cardstock, and I have rip and stick sheet on the back. And because things stayed in the die, I'm trying to remove the backing from just the letters. It worked for some of them. Some of them fell out, so I just put them on some sticker backing paper. I'm making things complicated, and I put the die and the negative together, and I'm going to flip that over and lay it on my cake. But you could just flip the die over. Like, that would have worked great here. I don't know. I don't know. I think I was up past my bedtime. Okay, so I'm going to lay that on there, and then I'm going to sort of temporarily tape it, flip it over, and run my finger over the cardstock because that kind of gets into the grooves of the die and picks up the sticker. I could have then added the negative just so I knew where to line up these additional letters, but in the end, it works out just fine. Then I'll use my pokey tool to remove that negative, and I have the word Celebrate beautifully situated across the top of my cake. So this is the circle-shaped card. I love this thing. You can make a donut, you can make a pizza, you can make all kinds of stuff, and I just think circle cards are kind of fun. It's about a 4.25 inch circle, so you can just put it in a standard A2 envelope and ship it for normal postage. For my pop-ups, I added 3 strips of rip and stick tape to both sides of each. Okay, so I just removed the backing paper and stuck it right in the middle of that scallop circle. And then I'm going to try to get this centered, and honestly, then my head was just in the way for the whole thing. So we edited my head out. There's a tiny little border, and I love that dark pop of teal there. But we're going to do the same thing with the small one, right? Remove the release paper, add it to the 3-inch circle, remove the release paper, and then I want to make sure I'm controlling where the Celebrate is and if it's straight. I want it a little crooked, but I put some mint tape at the top of that circle card where the fold is, so I knew where the top was, and then I could get everything exactly the way I wanted it. I am a staunch supporter of Team Teal, but even I was like, this needs some color. We need a pop of color here. So I grabbed the Pesky Parameters die set. It was from the Craft Roulette release, and I am assembling 3 small flowers. It cuts the center of the flower out, and so I just stuck a little tape right behind there, so it wasn't a big deal. I'm adding 1 flower with just a little green leaf up at the top, and I'll just put 2 dots of glue so I can kind of wiggle the pieces together. But for the bottom cluster, I want 2 flowers, I want 2 leaves, and at this point, the card's nearly done. So I like to combine my small die cuts together so I can treat them as a single piece, and I feel like I have more control over them that way. If this were a flat card, I would probably use my sticky mat to kind of pick them up and put them back down. But at this point, there's just too much dimension on here and it wasn't gonna happen. So my 2 little leaves are on there, and then I can add glue behind that entire cluster and add that onto my card and finish it up. You guys, that's it. We've got about 1 inch of pop on this card. Look at it from the side. And that circle-shaped card die helps us to really easily create the circle card. I hope you'll give this a try. It is a ton of fun. Leave me a comment below and be sure to hop along. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you next time.